Valerie Bertinelli once said she had seen more unstable people in the world of television than in Eddie Van Halen's rock world. She had never lived with anyone before meeting Eddie and wasn't sure if it would be worth it. Still, their love story began like something out of a movie. Valerie, known for her role as Barbara Cooper in the TV show One Day at a Time, met Eddie Van Halen, the famous guitarist from the rock band Van Halen, in 1980. They came from completely different worlds. Valerie from wholesome family TV and Eddie from the chaotic life of a rock star. But when they met, something clicked. They started dating quickly and got married on April 11, 1981, in a quiet ceremony in California. Even though they had very different careers and busy lives, Valerie tried to be there for Eddie. She often traveled with him on tour and did her best to make their marriage work despite the chaos of life on the road. In 1991, they had their only child, Wolfgang Van Halen, and Valerie later said that becoming a mother was the most wonderful moment of her life. She hoped their son would help bring them closer as a family. Valerie slowed down her career to spend more time at home, trying to balance being a mom, wife, and public figure. But life wasn't easy. Eddie was often absent, living the rock star lifestyle, while Valerie was left managing the home on her own. Despite the challenges, she didn't leave him, even when he started to struggle with serious health problems. They didn't talk about their issues publicly, and they still appeared together at events, keeping up the image of a happy couple. But behind the scenes, their relationship was breaking down. In October 2001, they confirmed their separation, and by December 2007, after 26 years together, their divorce was finalized. There was no public drama. Valerie stayed quiet and focused on raising her son. She worked on TV, wrote cookbooks, and tried to create a stable home. Eddie, meanwhile, battled health problems and stayed mostly out of the public eye. It wasn't until years later, in her 2008 memoir Losing It, that Valerie opened up about what had really gone wrong. She revealed that Eddie had been addicted to cocaine for most of their marriage. He drank heavily every day and often lost control. She still loved him deeply but admitted that she felt like she was no longer his partner, just someone living alongside his addiction. One heartbreaking moment she shared was how Eddie kept smoking and drinking even after being diagnosed with mouth cancer, which led to him losing a third of his tongue. Valerie described this as slow self-destruction. She also shared that during a low point in their marriage, she had an affair. She said it wasn't out of betrayal, but because she felt completely abandoned and needed to feel cared for. Eddie, too, had his own affairs, especially while on tour. They didn't fight about it or confront each other, they just silently drifted apart. In the early 2000s, Valerie's mental health took a hit. She developed an eating disorder, gained weight, and slowly withdrew from the spotlight. She told Oprah that after the split, she barely left her house and avoided socializing. She said it wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the end of her belief that love could fix everything. In 2022, with a second memoir Enough Already, Valerie offered a clearer and more accepting view of her past. She had been through therapy, had gotten sober, and could now look back with more understanding. She said their love story was beautiful but damaged. They were too young, unprepared for fame, and didn't know how to handle addiction or emotional distance. She had tried to act like the strong wife, but deep down she was breaking. In 2024, after watching a documentary by her son Wolfgang, Valerie posted a powerful message on Instagram. For the first time, she admitted publicly that Eddie was not her soulmate. She said she had been in love with an idealized version of him and was ready to play the grieving widow after his death, but the truth was they had not been a couple for over 20 years. Watching her son's pain, she realized she couldn't stay silent any longer. Her confession led to a wide mix of reactions. Some praised her honesty, especially since addiction is still a hard topic to talk about in Hollywood. Others felt that talking about Eddie's struggles after his death was unfair. But Valerie explained that she wasn't trying to ruin Eddie's legacy. She was sharing her story so others in similar situations wouldn't feel alone or ashamed. Her story wasn't about blame. It was about healing. While people might think her story means there was no love left between them, that's not true. Even after the divorce, Valerie and Eddie stayed connected for the sake of their son. They never fought in court or argued publicly. They quietly remained a team for Wolfgang, who became the bassist for Van Halen in 2006. Valerie and Eddie supported his career completely. Valerie once said that even though they weren't a traditional family anymore, they were still a team when it came to their son. Their marriage may have ended, but their bond as parents never did. When Eddie Van Halen began suffering from serious complications due to throat cancer in 2019, Valerie Bertinelli was by his side regularly, along with their son Wolfgang. His final days were quiet and private, spent only with close family and friends. Valerie was with him when he passed away on October 6, 2020. That same day, she posted a message on Instagram saying, "35 years ago my life changed forever when I met you, and today I'm grateful I got to be with you in your final moment." What was most striking about her message was the deep emotion behind it. Even though she hadn't been Eddie's wife for over a decade, she mourned him with real grief. Her words reflected not just the sadness of losing someone she once loved, but the end of a chapter in her life. Many media outlets noticed how sincere her tribute was. In her 2022 memoir Enough Already, Valerie described Eddie's last moments as both heartbreaking and peaceful. They shared final words of love, and she believed they both found forgiveness in that moment. Valerie made it clear that even though they couldn't live together anymore, a kind of love still existed, different from romantic love, but still real. However, some people criticized her after Eddie's death. When she later posted a video in 2024 stating that Eddie was not her soulmate and that they hadn't truly been a couple for 20 years, some accused her of using Eddie's memory to get attention. Valerie didn't argue with the criticism. Instead, she simply wrote, "There are things I stayed silent about for too long, not because I feared public judgment, but because I didn't understand them myself. Now I just want to speak the truth as part of my healing." She didn't try to portray herself as a grieving widow. Instead, she honored Eddie in an honest way, by recognizing his brilliance as a musician, his love as a father, and his struggles with addiction. Wolfgang, their son, has said that his mother always helped him understand both the good and bad sides of his father so he could grow beyond those patterns. After Eddie passed, Valerie entered a new phase in her life. While people often still thought of her as the ex-wife of a rock legend, she was focused on her own growth. One of those new chapters included marrying financial planner Tom Vitoli on January 1, 2011, after several years of dating. The wedding happened in Malibu, and both Eddie and Wolfgang attended. At the time, people saw it as an example of a modern blended family. Valerie felt hopeful. She thought this relationship would be different and more balanced than her first marriage. She wanted to build something based on maturity and shared respect. But over time, issues began to appear. Their values and daily lives didn't align. By the end of 2021, Valerie filed for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences. On Instagram, she wrote that she used to think love alone could fix everything, but now she realized that she had given too much in both marriages without receiving the same love in return. After that divorce, she didn't immediately return to the spotlight. She spent most of 2022 and 2023 focusing on therapy, writing her memoir Enough Already, and adjusting to a slower, quieter life. During this period, she also gave up alcohol and committed to taking better care of her mental health. She admitted in later interviews that she had lived in a constant state of anxiety and was finally learning how to say no to things that overwhelmed her. In March 2024, Valerie shared that she was in a new relationship with writer Mike Goodenough. They met through social media, connected over shared interests, and grew close over time. The couple made their first public appearance together at the Daytime Emmy Awards in June, which drew a lot of attention since it was the first time in years she had introduced a partner to the public. Fans saw the relationship as a sign that she was finally healing. But by November 2024, she confirmed their breakup in another Instagram post. She didn't go into much detail but explained that outside pressures, not a lack of love, caused the split. Mike later said their relationship had been the best part of his year and that they had ended things respectfully. By March 2025, Valerie shared a deeper truth about her past relationships. She said she had spent years trying to earn love by giving too much of herself, only to realize that she could never fill the emptiness inside through other people. She explained that now she's learning to be emotionally responsible for herself. That message struck a chord with many women, especially those who had experienced divorce or emotional burnout later in life. During this same period, Valerie also talked more openly about her mental health. In November 2024, she revealed that she had gone through a serious anxiety episode that forced her to take time off from work. She didn't try to hide it or sugarcoat the experience. She simply said, "I used to be afraid to admit I was tired, but I can't keep pretending I'm okay." Since then, she has become more active in mental health awareness and advocacy, choosing to speak openly about what she's gone through. Valerie has stopped trying to live up to the image of the perfect wife or the cheerful TV star. Instead, she now presents herself as a woman who has lived through hard times and learned from them. She doesn't try to hide her mistakes. Instead, she treats them as an important part of her journey. She says she's no longer looking for someone else to make her happy. She's focusing on her own emotional well-being and learning to live in a more honest way. Now, at 65 years old, Valerie Bertinelli no longer defines herself by her past. She is not just Eddie Van Halen's ex-wife or the sweet girl from 1980s television. She has moved past those labels. She has chosen to live as her true self, speaking openly, making peace with her past, and finding strength in her own voice. By the end of 2023, her long-running show Valerie's Home Cooking had wrapped up after 8 seasons. It marked the end of another chapter, but not the end of her story. She is still writing it, on her own terms. Valerie Bertinelli's later years have been marked not by reinvention, but by a shedding of roles: wife, TV star, Food Network staple, and a return to something more essential, herself. After stepping down from Kids Baking Championship, a show she co-hosted for nearly a decade, Valerie described the decision as heartbreaking. Though she didn't leave by choice, she chose to face the transition without bitterness. "It hurt," she told E! News, "but some things end even when we love them." Her focus shifted, not toward reclaiming the spotlight, but toward redefining how she showed up in the world. In September 2024, she returned to television not as a host or chef, but as a lifestyle contributor on The Drew Barrymore Show, speaking candidly about stress, boundaries, and what she called post-divorce emotional wellness, a term unfamiliar to many, yet deeply resonant with viewers navigating life after major endings. Her segments weren't about recipes or celebrity anecdotes. They were about survival, self-worth, and how to speak to yourself when everything else feels like it's failing. On social media, too, her voice changed. Her Instagram, once filled with food demos and project promos, became a raw and personal diary. She documented panic attacks, days when she couldn't get out of bed, moments of peace, and millions responded. One video in November 2024, capturing a panic attack in real time, carried the caption, "I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the only one going through it." It struck a nerve and garnered not just views, but deep gratitude. Valerie's most constant anchor has been her son, Wolfgang. Their relationship, warm and quietly close, has been one of mutual respect rather than performative affection. In early 2025, she made a brief surprise appearance at one of his concerts, stepping on stage just long enough to say, "I'll never join my son's band, but I'm his #1 fan." Later, she called their bond the clearest accomplishment of my life. And then, on her 65th birthday, April 23, 2025, she wrote, "I've been through enough to know the light at the end of the tunnel doesn't come from someone else. It appears when you stop and turn toward yourself." It was a quiet revelation, the kind you don't arrive at in youth. There was no longer a chase, no grasping for relevance, romance, or resolution. There was simply her, owning her narrative without trying to please anyone. She hasn't announced retirement. But she's made no effort to stage a grand return either. That, perhaps, is her clearest statement. She no longer needs the world's applause to feel valid. Just being truthful is enough. Reflecting on Eddie and Valerie, a legacy of love, pressure, and truth. Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli were once one of the most iconic celebrity couples of the 1980s. He was a revolutionary guitarist whose tapping technique redefined rock music. She was the wholesome TV star who grew into a multi-Emmy winning figure in food and lifestyle programming. Their 26-year journey together, from passion to pain, to quiet forgiveness, was as complex as any marriage lived under fame's microscope. Entertainment Weekly once dubbed them an iconic marriage of American rock and TV. It didn't last, but both their legacies did. Eddie's as a music innovator and Valerie's as a symbol of emotional honesty and survival in a high-pressure industry.